Russian President Vladimir Putin, he has repeated his claim since the beginning of the invasion that Russia is fighting for its own survival in Ukraine, insisting that the West provoked Moscow into the conflict. He made the remarks again today during a rare public appearance outside the Kremlin. Now, this one took place at a military aircraft factory in Siberia, where the Kremlin is ramping up production.
Vladimir Putin is shown around the plant, which makes military helicopters, including those used by the Russian army in Ukraine. As the carefully choreographed tour proceeds, Putin stops by a group of workers. But the Russian president is here not to answer their questions. He wants to send a couple of messages to the people at home. One of them is about why Russia is continuing its war of aggression in Ukraine.
For us, it is a fight for the existence of the Russian state itself, because our adversaries, as I used to call them partners, they have one task, and we became convinced of this in previous decades, to rock the boat, shatter Russia into pieces. So for us, this is not a geopolitical task, but the task of the survival of Russian statehood.
It's the latest explanation that Putin and Russian state TV have been using to justify the stalled war. The conflict has made Russia the most sanctioned country in the world, but Putin, as well as many Western observers, say the Russian economy is faring much better than expected.
What did our adversaries hope for? That we would collapse in 2 to 3 weeks or a month. That's what the hope was. That business would come to a halt as our partners would refuse to work with us in the economic area. That the financial system would collapse. That's what the hope was. That didn't happen. It turned out that the fundamental pillars of stability of Russia are far more robust than they had thought them to be.
The economy may have survived, but it's been increasingly put on a war footing. As the president was in Siberia, his defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, toured a missile factory near Moscow, urging workers to double production. Economists warn that sanctions will eventually lead to falling living standards for the Russian people. But so far, it appears that is a price Putin is willing to pay to continue his war.
Well, my next guest is Angela Stent. She is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. She has written extensively about Russia's relations with the U.S. and Europe. Her latest book is Putin's World, Russia Against the West and with the Rest. Ms. Stent, it's good to see you again. I want to start just by getting your take on the images that we saw today. Vladimir Putin almost bathing in the carefully choreographed, albeit, but bathing in the crowd of people. That is something we haven't seen in a very long time. What's the message there?
Well, I think the message there is everyone thought he was just sitting in a bunker, didn't want to see people. The message is, I'm in good health, I'm in control, I'm your leader, and, you people want to see me. So it's sort of, I'm back again in the saddle after COVID and all the other things. So definitely trying to rally the population.
And I'm wondering, is he sending that message with these images because he wants to, or is it more because he has to?
Well, I think that there's been much speculation, right, about his health, about his state of mind, because he's been absent so much. So I think he must feel that there's some pressure on him, again, to show the public that he's in charge, he's in control. He gave a speech a couple of weeks ago to the, like a State of the Union message saying, we will win on the battlefield and we're winning. So he wants to give a more upbeat message to his population.
And do we know, are they buying in to this messaging? I mean, how secure is the image of Vladimir Putin in the Russian public sphere?
Well, I think Putin has used this year of the war, paradoxically, to consolidate his power. You would have thought that a leader where the army has done so badly where there are over 200,000 people dead or severely wounded, that they might have been booted out of office, but not Putin. So he strengthened his hold on the country. And if we can believe the public opinion polls that come out, and you have to be a little bit skeptical, the majority of the population that has remained in Russia, and don't forget 1 million have left, the majority who've remained either support the war or they're kind of indifferent to it. And so far he's succeeded in convincing them, apparently, that in fact the West is trying to break up Russia, and this is a fight for their existence.
Mr. I want to get your opinion on what happened today with this drone and these Russian fighter jets. I mean, the account that we're getting from Russia, from the Kremlin, is different from what we're getting from Washington. Is this a situation that could work to Vladimir Putin's advantage?
I would be skeptical about that. I mean, the Russians have been harassing, as your previous guest said, have been harassing U.S. and NATO aircraft. They've been doing some quite dangerous maneuvers, and this time they actually forced the drone down. I'm sure the Russians will try and use this to say that this is something invented by the West and they weren't doing anything that was inappropriate. But I doubt that this will work to Russia's interest. And
what about the notion of Vladimir Putin looking at all of this with a long-term perspective and just waiting it out, waiting for the Western unity with Ukraine to fall apart? I mean, does he have that leverage still going for him at this point, despite, the dismal performance by his military?
Yes, he's certainly still waiting out the West. He's looking at the United States. And his people are listening to the debates in the Congress. The Republican Party candidates who are now coming out saying, like Governor Ron DeSantis, that this is a local territorial dispute which has nothing to do with U.S. interests. He's looking at Europe, where you obviously have had some demonstrations in different countries against support for Ukraine because of the sanctions, because of the economic impact. So he's playing a long game. And, his previous experience has informed him that, the West doesn't hold together forever, that democracies get distracted, they have elections, they have to turn to other things. So that's certainly what he thinks he's doing now.
And the images that we saw today of him at this factory, it looks like an economy that is working. It certainly doesn't look like an economy that has been hit with major economic sanctions. I mean, is he right when he says, yeah, you've tried to hit us, but it really hasn't hurt us?
Yeah, the Russian economy has proven much more resilient than the people in the West thought it would. The sanctions have had an impact, but they haven't really affected the life of of average Russians. At least in the cities, the supermarkets are full with goods. They're not Western goods anymore, but they're from plenty of other places. So, I think he's right in saying that the Western sanctions have not crippled the Russian economy, and that Russia has been quite resilient.
Angela Stent, as always, it's good to get your insights and your takes on what is happening, particularly in Russia. Thank you.
Thank you.